Conservative commentator Ben Shapiro is being hailed for his courage. This is an editorial in the Jerusalem Post written by Rabbi Berg saying Shapiro deserves support for this speech in which he called out Tucker Carlson and right-wing anti-Semitism. It happened last weekend at the massive Turning Point AmFest.
If you host a Hitler apologist, Nazi-loving, anti-American piece of refuse like Nick Fuentes, you know, the Nick Fuentes who said that the Vice President of the United States is a, quote, fat gay race traitor married to a the person who said that Charlie Kirk was a, quote, idiot. The person who said, and pardon my language here, it's his quote, that he, quote, took Turning Point USA and it, and that's why it's filled with groypers. If you have that person on your show and you proceed to glaze him, you ought to own it.
Now, the author of that op-ed, Rabbi Berg, was also a guest earlier today on Newsmax.
We're living in a generation now where people have kind of left the networks and gone out on their own. But the problem is they're answerable to no one except chasing the buck. And as chasing the buck, anti-Semitism has been something that gets them more followers. What Ben Shapiro said that really moved me was, you know, we have to have standards. We need to know who we are, but more importantly, we need to know who we're not. And we can't just be this big tent that lets racists and bigots come inside, because that's not America.
Joining me now to discuss this, pleased to have Rabbi Yaakov Menken, the Executive Vice President, Coalition for Jewish Values, with us. And Newsmax contributor Bryan Leib, he's also the CEO of Henry Public Relations. Gentlemen, pleasure to have you. Ben Shapiro denounced Carlson for inviting anti-Semite Nick Fuentes on the show. It seems like that this has obviously sparked so much controversy as well and discussion. We had that op-ed piece that we just shared. And, you know, I'll start with you, Rabbi Yaakov. You have these young people who are gathering at Turning Point. They hear Ben Shapiro, and then Tucker Carlson comes on. There's a lot of discussion. What would be your word to people out there who are looking at horrific anti-Semitism across the globe and trying to understand where they move forward in this to denounce it?
You know, there was 2 people murdered in Israel earlier today. This just happened, that in northern Israel, a 19-year-old woman was stabbed to death, and then the terrorist got back in his car and ran over a 68-year-old man. This is happening on a daily basis. Look at the horrific terror attack that happened in Australia at the beginning of the Hanukkah holiday. It is not hard to understand that the type of rhetoric that was being used and platformed by Tucker Carlson, that rightly earned him the distinction from the Stop Anti-Semitism group of the Anti-Semite of the Year, is because that insightful rhetoric is leading directly to this type of attack that we are seeing around the globe. We have to speak out against it. We have to speak out against it forcefully, and all Americans have to do so, because the country that they want to create, where they want to tear down the country and replace it, is not a country in which people will want to live.
Thank you, Rabbi Menken. Let's play a little clip from Tucker Carlson and get your reaction on the other side, Bryan.
To hear calls for like deplatforming and denouncing people at a Charlie Kirk event, I'm like, what? This is hilarious. I don't hate you or anyone else. I love this country. I'm going to be here till I die. I have an absolute God-given right to ask these questions.
So that was his response after Ben Shapiro, Bryan.
Yeah, Bianca, he loves this country so much that he's buying a timeshare in Qatar. Listen, what we saw with Ben Shapiro's speech at Turning Point USA was really, I think, a watershed moment for the conservative movement as a whole. It forced a long overdue, moral line in the sand, which we also saw translated later in the conference into a poll when they polled the audience and the attendees, and they said 87% of the audience does support Israel. But now I think, more than ever, as the rabbi just said, conservatives and Americans as a whole have to find their backbone and call out Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes and even Matt Gaetz. I mean, this is the moment to stop anti-Semitism from spreading inside of our own movement. And just really quickly, Bianca, on a recent podcast a couple days ago, Tucker Carlson, Matt Gaetz, they started their podcast saying that they don't even know what anti-Semitism is anymore, or does it really even exist. Let me just tell the audience really quickly what anti-Semitism looks like. Every Jewish event that I and Rabbi Menken and Jews all around this country attend in public has private security, has mini SWAT teams surrounding us at venues. I personally receive constant death threats saying, "Die Jew, I'm going to kill you Jew," via email and social media on a weekly basis. Listen, that is anti-Semitism. So I am done placating this denial messaging and the gaslighting from these idiots like Carlson and Gaetz and Fuentes, minimizing this hatred. Enough is enough. Everyone has to find their moral compass and the moral clarity needed to say that anti-Semitism has no place in this country.
Well, thank you both for coming.